Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. In episode 60, we speak with CEO and founder of Whoop, Will Ahmed.
All right, so you shoot away, Don.
So we've got Will Ahmed on, who's the CEO of Whoop. And Whoop right now, I would go as far to say it's the most popular wearable device, I think, on one of the most popular wearable devices on the planet. I got a hold of one a couple months ago, and I've been using it and really kind of diving into it. But Will, besides it being a great wearable, let's start back, all the way to Harvard, your background. How did you come to this idea? How did it come to fruition?
Yeah, thanks, Don, and thanks for having me on. I think for me, I was really interested in how to better understand the human body, and I was an athlete in college. I was playing squash competitively. I was captain of the Harvard squash team. And I feel like I just didn't really know what I was doing to my body while I was training, and this isn't uncommon for athletes. Athletes overtrain, undertrain, get injured, misinterpret fitness peaks, don't necessarily understand the importance of recovery or sleep. And so for me, it was getting very interested in how can you better understand the human body. I did a ton of physiology research in school. I started wearing all sorts of different products. And by the time I had graduated, I had probably read about 500 medical papers, and I had written a paper myself around how to continuously understand the human body. And that ultimately became the business plan for Whoop. I thought if you could measure things like stress and recovery and sleep, you could really start to tell someone how to optimize their body. And specifically from the standpoint of athletics, I thought that I realized that the secret for a lot of people was not training more. It was understanding how the other 20 hours of the day when you weren't exercising were affecting your body. This idea that sleep is a black box, this idea that the squash team might play ping pong for 2 hours, and next thing you know, they're putting stress on their body they don't even realize, right? And so how do all these other things in your life actually affect human performance? And, that was really the question behind founding Whoop, is how do you optimize human performance? And that's our mission today.
Well, I think what's really cool about it is, Derek and I have been in the industry, Derek even longer than me because he is older. He just turned 50. Man, happy birthday, D.
Happy birthday. Look good.
Looks great, man.
I'm trying to. All with Don's help.
Yeah, right. But what I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about, and I think the best example I can give right now is I remember the Atlanta Braves at one point had a pitching staff of 4 guys. It was like Glavine, Smoltz, Maddox, and it might have been like Avery. And they were probably 4 of the best pitchers in baseball at the time. But I remember at a young age listening to when they weren't pitching and how much golf they were playing. And, athletes always think of golf as a sport that's not really taxing on the body, and that it doesn't. And it was funny because I went and I wore my Whoop the other day and was able to measure, the strain and what happened after I walked, for 3.5 hours, and you're playing golf and you're still you're in the game and you're thinking. And when I got off the course and it registered, I still was able to see. And obviously you feel that, this wasn't going and getting a massage. There's still
right. Things happen.
Right. And I think even in sports today, not to jump ahead, but people are under the assumption that, if I can get in during the day, that's a good thing. You guys have created a solution right now that's kind of going against that in a way.
Yeah, I think the reality is that there's a lot of different things in your life that's putting on stress on your body. You mentioned golf. Most people don't think of golf as being a particularly grueling sport, but if you've got this elevated heart rate for a long period of time, if you're stressed about certain shots, it's going to affect how you feel at the end of the day. And when I say feel, I really mean what's going on inside, not just what you think you feel, but actually what's happening inside your body, because there's secrets that your body is trying to tell you that you actually can't feel. And that's what's powerful about Whoop, is we're able to measure those things. We're able to measure things about your autonomic nervous system that suggest how ready is this person to perform. And that's where the coaching comes in, where we can tell you, hey, how recovered are you? Is this a day where you should really put a lot of strain on your body? Or actually, is this a day you should do nothing at all? You should just rest. In a lot of ways, Whoop is the first fitness product to tell you not to exercise. Right? We'll tell you just to take the day off. And I think that level of balance is actually quite powerful.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I had visited Don in New York, and I was in Montreal. I was traveling a lot, and I found that like my heart rate was elevated. I felt horrible, and like, is this something that you guys use to actually even manage travel stress and obviously sleep? And I wasn't exercising, so how could somebody use it for managing their travel?
Well, I think in general you can only manage what you measure, right? And intellectually people realize that traveling affects their body, but they don't measure anything about it. And what we've seen is that traveling over a certain number of time zones will dramatically affect your body. And depending on what your goals are, there's different ways to approach those time zones. So we know, for example, that sleep consistency is a very important element to your circadian rhythm. Sleep consistency being, do you go to bed at the same time every night and wake up at the same time? And how much do you deviate from that? And what we've seen is that if you have a really good sleep consistency, you can actually get away with getting less sleep. Like total duration, you can get less of if you're going to bed and waking up at the same time. And I bring up time zones because they screw up that circadian rhythm. So if Don's got to go East Coast, West Coast, East Coast to train some stars, and he's only going to be on the West Coast for 24 hours, it's actually better if he tries to fall asleep on East Coast time. Now, maybe on the flip, he's got to be out there for a month because someone's shooting a movie or something, right? In that case, he's going to want to get calibrated to the time zone quickly. So this is where it goes back to what your goals are. And I think by being able to measure how your body is responding to a new time zone, a new environment, you can start to action off of it.
Can you explain to our listeners right now HRV? Because this has been I started hearing about HRV, I think, when Joel Jamison's came out with his heart rate variability monitor years ago, and then it got into Omega Wave, and there was all these different systems coming out. But HRV it's a term that's being dropped a lot.
So HRV stands for heart rate variability. And it is it's a measurement of the time between successive beats of the heart. So if your heart is beating at 60 beats per minute, it's literally not beating every second. It might be like 1.2 seconds, 0.8 seconds, 0.7 seconds, 1.3 seconds. Like it's constantly moving around. And that's actually a good thing. The more variability, the better. It's a counterintuitive concept because it's your body's ability to regulate. So heart rate variability is this lens into your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. Sympathetic's activation, right? Heart rate up, blood pressure up, respiration up. It's what's happening when you're stressed, when you're thinking, when you inhale. Sympathetic. Okay, parasympathetic's all the opposite. Heart rate down, blood pressure down, respiration down. And you want for every sympathetic for there to be a parasympathetic response. This is why your heart rate goes up when you inhale, goes down when you exhale, right? Parasympathetic helps you fall asleep. So for every sympathetic having a parasympathetic, the more imbalanced these things are, actually the more your variability goes up. And these things being imbalanced is a sign that your body's regulating itself. And so we measure heart rate variability, which is the lens into your autonomic nervous system, during slow wave sleep. Slow wave sleep, as many of your listeners may know, is when your body produces 95% of its human growth hormone. So this idea that you get strong in the gym isn't entirely true, right? Like you're breaking your muscles down in the gym. You're actually getting stronger afterwards when you're resting, like during slow wave sleep, and building muscle back on. So we measure the statistic heart rate variability. We do it during slow wave sleep when your body's repairing, and we do that every single day. And so then we can compare this statistic to itself over time to understand how recovered your body is.
Well, I mean, it's bringing me to the alcohol topic because
Yeah, there you go.
We live in a society where people like to have their cake and eat it, and they want to have their drinks, and most people will reach out to me and say, well, what's the lowest calorie drink and what's gluten-free? And I'm like, guys, alcohol is alcohol. It's a toxin to the body. The body doesn't like it. If I go drink once in a while, it could be a mojito, it could be a margarita, it could be a beer. It's so once in a blue moon. For me, I don't care because I'm not worried about the calories. But what it's really doing is it's causing that hormonal damage. It's causing that disruption to rest. And one of the best ways, because I put this on the wrist of a lot of people as of recent, that they've been able to see that proof is in the pudding, is if they exceed that one cocktail. You know, if they have that 2 or 3, what it's actually doing. They might think they have a good night's sleep, but they're waking up and their sleep has been heavily disrupted. Their recovery is down. Then I think it starts opening their eyes to all these external stresses that they don't really look at the way that they should be looking at it. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's gold.
Absolutely. Like what we see with alcohol is that it's incredibly disruptive to slow wave sleep, REM sleep, which is where your body's really recovering. Slow wave with muscle growth. REM is really when your brain's repairing itself. So if you're drinking alcohol, it's affecting those periods of sleep. And as a consequence, your heart rate variability is lower. And when your heart variability is lower, it's because there's more sympathetic, not enough parasympathetic. Your body's not able to regulate itself properly. And, you know, it's interesting. You can have 1 or 2 drinks even right before you go to bed, and it'll just dramatically affect your sleep. You know, you think, oh, that 1 more drink is not going to matter. It actually dramatically affects your body. And I think this is a big thing when you go back to this idea of manage what you measure. If you're not measuring your body, it's very easy to tell yourself that extra couple drinks doesn't matter. But when you start to measure, oh my gosh, I went from getting 2 hours of slow wave sleep to 15 minutes. Wow. Like I am not going to be benching with Don tomorrow. You know, it's like I'm done. I'm shot. Right. So I think that's a big difference. We did a study on college athletes. It was kind of scary. So college athletes are obviously not having 1 or 2 drinks, it's binge drinking. And we saw that college athletes who went out and drank versus their teammates who didn't, right? So you've got the people on the team who drank versus the teammates who didn't. The guys who drank had up to a 5-day hangover effectively through Whoop. Like their heart rate variabilities and their sleep statistics were suppressed for up to 5 days relative to the teammates who didn't.
So, Derek, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I was going to ask was obviously stress is stress, and sometimes heart rate variability can pick up stress. Like,
totally.
how do you differentiate? Like, do you get people to keep almost like a bit of a log or a journal of like, this is what I did, and so they can go back and go, was it the heavy bench press? Was it the guy who cut me off in traffic? Was it my wife, nagging at me? Totally. How do you differentiate? Do you think, or how would somebody approach that?
Well, I mean, an individual is always going to know a little bit more about the other things that are happening in his or her life than Whoop will. I mean, today, though, we're trying to gather more of that information. We'll ask you whether you're feeling stressed in the morning, how energetic you are, certain things. Did you do them last night? Did you share your bed? Did you drink alcohol? Did you have nicotine products? All these sorts of things help us start to calibrate what may or may not be affecting you. And over time, that's going to be a big area of investment for us, is to effectively allow anyone to A/B test whatever they want on their body. Do you want to introduce meditation? Okay, what does it do to your body? Do you want to, go out partying every Friday night for the next 2 months? Okay, what does it do to your body, right? Like, there's all sorts of different things that are lifestyle decisions that clearly may or may not affect your stress levels and your sleep levels. And so that's where Whoop can come in and sort of offer guidance. Hey, this is working or this isn't.
Yeah, because I'm in Canada, and I think an interesting application would be like all of this CBD and cannabis type stuff, and like, is it actually working? Is it calming things down?
I mean, it is for some people. That's the thing, right? Like, a lot of this is not one size fits all. I mean, it's like with diets, right? Is keto right for you? Is paleo right for you? Is low carb right for you? The only way to actually tell, beyond just the weight loss results that you might be looking for, is also to understand your physiology. We've worked with some of the best athletes in the world who have had diametrically different results to the same exact diet or the same exact supplements or the same exact sleep routines. So you have to, try to figure out what's right for you, and being able to measure that stuff is really important. There was just an article in ESPN, on ESPN.com, Scott McCarron, who's been a very successful senior tour golf winner. He was actually saying that he found that CBD oil was really working for him. And the reason he knew that was because he had been on Whoop for a year, and he started using CBD, and he saw his slow wave sleep and REM sleep go up on nights that he would take CBD. And so as a result, now he's a CBD guy.
It was funny. It was funny not turning this into a CBD talk, but I've always been kind of, a skeptic on it because there's just not a lot of research out. But even when there is a lot of research out, how many times, Will, have you seen research that was valid 10 years ago and then 10 years later that they're almost contradicting, what was published, 10 years earlier? But I did one time. I hired a new masseuse at my club. The guy's phenomenal. Brings me in one day, wants to give me some tissue work, and I just got off a bad call. I was really stressed out. And he looked at me. He goes, "You all right?" I says, "Man, I'm having a shit day." And he turns around, and he grabs a tincture drop of CBD, and I start laughing at him. Like, "All right, sure, give me a droplet." I went, "Ooh," and he gave me a very high dosage of CBD. It might have been like 2,000 or 3,000 milligrams of the bottle. It was like 2 or 3 full tinctures of it. And he put on he said, "Hold on under your tongue. This is a high quality CBD." I think the bottle was like $300 for the bottle. Very expensive. And I'm laying there literally within, I think, 10 or 15 minutes. I looked at him, I said, "Is there THC in this?" I got worried. I was like, "Did you?" He goes, "No, there's no THC in this." I was like, because my body, I literally felt like I was on a cloud. And my body, I was able to get into this relaxed state. And I said, "Holy shit." I said, like anything else, there's high quality food, there's poor quality food. I'm sure there's high quality. I think there's something to it. I just think there's so much garbage out there. And I think people are putting stuff in gas stations, and you're going into a 7-Eleven and they're advertising CBD. I think like any supplement you would buy, you have to be very careful. There's obviously not enough regulation on it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the inverse of CBD is coffee. And we already know the spectrum of coffee that's out there.
Right.
That exists every day. You can get really high quality coffee that helps brain function, helps muscle growth. You can get low quality coffee that is going to make your heart rate variability all kinds of screwed up. And that's been in the world for a long time. I think CBD is kind of a new version of that, but probably, trying to have a bit of an inverse effect. And your point's totally right, which is like, there's good stuff out there and there's bad stuff, but you ultimately got to figure out what's right for you, which is where I think a product like Whoop is very valuable, because you can measure, what does this thing do to my body?
Right. And you used a word earlier, Derek, he used a word and he said lifestyle. And initially, 8-10 years ago, when I started researching wearables a little bit more, my whole thought process was, oh yeah, you know what? This is only going to go to a specific client, like a very high performance client. It's like sending someone for blood work to really dive in on their levels. There's your typical blood work that your general practitioner gives you, and then you can really do a deep dive on that stuff. And that's not for everyone. But in the beginning, I used to think, and I was wrong, Will, that the wearable should only go on the wrist of someone who is really looking for optimization. But the reality is that if you want to be optimal, yes, this is a great tool, but just putting it on the wrist of someone who's not even a gym goer, who's just trying to improve quality of lifestyles, rest, lower stress levels, this is gold. I mean, this is really going to give them, whether it was accurate or not, I mean, say what you want, but it's still a quantifiable measure that you're going to be able to now day in and day out monitor.
Yeah, and look, by the way, we are quite accurate. We take that very seriously. We do all kinds of third-party validation. We're the most accurate heart rate monitor from the wrist, sleep monitor from the wrist. We measure heart rate variability within the same accuracy as an electrocardiogram. So I do think accuracy is quite important. But to your point, having something that is creating a daily measurement for you to calibrate against. Again, if you're motivated at all to improve, I don't care what you want to improve, you're going to find value in it. We have people today who actually don't exercise that much, but they're very focused on what are all these other things in my life that are positive or negative. Obviously, sleep is a huge theme right now. I think sleep is really the new steps. 5 years ago, the mass market story was you need to get 10,000 steps. I think everyone's over that. Didn't work out, right? And now it's like, can you get 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night? And, sleep deprivation is an epidemic. And so just by being able to accurately monitor your sleep creates a bit of a behavior shift.
Yeah. Have you marketed it towards, say, higher level business people or CEOs who want to be sharper and they want to, make sure their brain functions at an optimal level?
Well, whether we've marketed it directly to them or not, they're definitely buying it. Like we get messages every day from top executives. We have really interesting Fortune 500 CEOs that I've gotten to interact with that use the product. And, these are people that want to find an edge in their life. And I think if you're one of those and you're listening to this, like, you will be able to use this product in a way that can help you improve. And that may or may not be exercise related, but it will definitely be lifestyle related.
I think I had a heavy squat session during the week, and I had a hockey game that night. Don't ask why I did it both in one day, but I did. And I remember the next day I'm running up a flight of stairs, and my body's not sore, but I felt very tired.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I understand that was probably that I overdid it and that my CNS was a little fried. Most people would come to me and say, I'm out of shape. And what's kind of ironic about all this is that I think a lot of people that come to me aren't as out of shape as they think they are. They're just, their body's taxed and they're beat up. But HRV is really able to I was able to go into my HRV and look and say, oh shit, of course, that makes sense now. I saw that my HRV really dropped in that 24-hour period of time because I overstepped.
I'll give you a fascinating sports analogy to what you just said. So we've got a really talented point guard in the NBA on Whoop. I'm not going to say who it is, but all-star in the NBA, okay? When he has a high recovery on Whoop, so we measure recovery 0 to 100%, red, yellow, green. When he's got a green high recovery on Whoop, his stat line is 22 points per night, 52% field goal percentage, and an average of 1 turnover, okay? This is a point guard NBA high recovery. When he has a low recovery, which admittedly is less common than a high recovery, but when he has a low recovery, his stat line, 18 points per game, 35% field goal percentage, and 8 turnovers.
Oh my God.
So same exact athlete, but if you look at those stat lines side by side, you're talking about a max contract in the NBA versus a guy who's coming off the bench on a mediocre team. And what that shows you is that you can be a different version of yourself depending on how ready your body is. I mean, you just said it running up the stairs. I think a lot of people are just operating at a suboptimal level. On the scale of 0 to 10, they're like a 4 or a 5 every day. And what you want is to be able to jump up to a 9 or a 10, and then sure, you want to throw in a 3 from time to time, fine. But be able to get your performance at a high level on certain days. I think that's a lot of what we're trying to accomplish at Whoop. And the Moneyball 2.0 moment here, right, is it's not just how talented an athlete is on any given day. It's how ready is that person to perform on that given day. And we've now started doing work in all these other industries: pilots, trauma surgeons, doctors, cops, firemen. And it's like, let's say, God forbid, you get in an accident and you go into a trauma surgeon clinic, right? Do you want the best doctor in the world with a really low recovery? Or do you want, someone who's average, who's really, really well rested? Right? I don't know the answer to that. But
these are things that are really important. These are things that are really important. Like, sport is fun. And I understand it's a livelihood for people, but we've always put so much value into sport and like optimization. Like, how about if doctors are optimal? How about our police officers? How are they like? Are they optimal? Like, that's our safety.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah,
they need it.
Derek, reminds me about the whole golf.
Yeah. We talked to Don's buddy Len, who was in the Masters, and my thing was like, how are you managing anxiety from shot to shot? How would you monitor something like that? Is that something that you could work with a golfer, and Don could share his expertise in this too, and manage their just, I guess, relaxation levels and getting through, because I assume it's a big deal.
It's amazing. We actually have had a lot of just great golfers wearing Whoop. I was watching the tournament earlier today, and both Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy are wearing Whoop straps. Right? They're just people who bought it at Whoop.com because they're getting value out of the product. And I've interacted with each of them very briefly, but it's like, those are guys that are putting enormous amounts of stress on their body. Certainly there's the tournament itself, which is intense, but think about the rest of the week where you're doing marketing things, you're doing sponsorship things, you're traveling an enormous amount, you've got a bunch of different coaches, these guys are exercising more and more. So they're actually putting way more stress on their body than I think most people intellectually, would sort of think, just because their sport is golf and not football, right? But the reality is they're putting an enormous amount of stress on their body, and they need to offset that with sleep. So understanding that, you may be better off sleeping into 8 or 9 a.m. rather than waking up at 6 and doing an extra range session, giving a high performer an excuse really to recognize that less may actually be more, like get more sleep. I think that's probably the most obvious thing for golf. Now, I think there's definitely interesting things that you can think about throughout the game, like your pre-shot routine. Do you want to get your heart rate to a certain level? And is it different for different shots? It might be a good thing to get your heart rate elevated for certain drives. Maybe it gets you more driving distance. However, I would think for putting, the lower the resting heart rate, the better. I'm just speculating a little bit, but here we are, right? People are getting paid millions of dollars to win at this sport, and I don't know if anyone's going to definitively tell me the answer to what I just said. So that therein lies potential and possibility.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, I've been in the golf world most of my career, and and I even hear from a lot of amateurs players. They're like, "Oh, I'm a 0 on the range," but then I go out on the range and I just, and I shoot 100. I don't get it. My swing is perfect on the range. I'm the best ball striker on the range, and I'm like, man, if you have just the ounce, I think golf in my eyes is the most difficult sport. And I'm going to tell you why. Even though it's not a contact game, people think it doesn't require a lot of endurance. If you are holding the least bit of tension anywhere in your body,
totally,
that club head is off by a hair. That's the difference between a ball down the middle and a shot that's blocked. And I've never seen so much precision that has to go into every swing and every shot. And when these players are out, and you brought up Rory, I've become pretty friendly with him over the last year, and he messaged me when he listened to the Woo podcast that you had me on.
Oh, good.
He messaged me to just say how much he enjoyed the interview, and
that's awesome.
And I ran into him a week ago, and I saw him wearing a white one, and we started talking about it. It became a topic of conversation, and it's impressed me about him is not only is he one of the nicest athlete, probably the nicest athlete I've ever met.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. Yeah.
But he's incredibly smart, and he's putting a lot into the thought process that goes into his training. And he wouldn't mind me saying this, but where maybe 10 years ago, his routine was about getting up in the morning and working out before his range sessions. And then after the round in the afternoon, getting back and doing a double session. It is, heart rate variability and monitoring his body and listening to what his body's doing day in and day out has really enabled him to be a lot smarter with his training. And it's showing in his play. I mean, he's having a very good season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Justin Thomas just started using it too. And I saw he just broke the course record yesterday. It's pretty cool. I mean, these guys are so talented, I think, across the board. I think what separates the guys who are winning from the guys that are feeling like their game's not quite perfect is probably as much outside of golf as it is in. They all have the talent. It's just a question of, is their body relaxed? Is their mind relaxed too, right?
Yeah, and I would tell you right now, Derek, I'll let you jump in next, but for how these guys, every one of them swing the golf club and the amount of time they put into their game, I would almost like to see less time put into the range sessions and in the gym.
Really agree.
Yeah, exactly. More of it put into how to regulate their heart rate and the mental game. Every one of them hiring a mental coach and sitting down, and maybe it's meditation, maybe it's breathing, maybe it's another recovery modality that they don't know about yet. But that's where I feel like, and all these players out there who feel like they have the best swing on the range and they can't put it together on the course, it's a different gear that some of these athletes have.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, even just the concept of saying you have the best swing on the range is kind of loser think. It's like no one's getting paid for that.
Yeah, no one's getting paid for that. I get it. Proof's in the pudding, man. You got to win. Derek, what do you have on that?
Well, I'm thinking as we go here, and I do some work with NFL teams. My son Don and I talked about my son's going to be playing tackle football, just turned 15. What about concussions? Have you had any experience looking at the relationship between heart rate variability and concussion rehab and how you can manage that?
Great question.
Well, given how important concussions are as a topic, it's actually amazing how little research there is out there about concussions. You know, Whoop is the official recovery wearable of the NFL Players Association. So we are actually being distributed right now to every player in the NFL. And part of our relationship with the NFLPA is to do research on concussions. So this year we'll have individuals, when they get concussions, mark that in their data, and we'll be able to look at the physiological response. And the hope there is actually to be able to detect concussions that weren't properly diagnosed, right? Because my hunch with CTE, and again, I'm not a doctor, my hunch with CTE is that it's not the knockout hit that airs on ESPN and everyone kind of goes, ooh, you know, it's actually a lot of little impacts, right? And maybe something that the player didn't feel in the moment and no one on the sideline saw, but I have a feeling your body feels later. And so that's where you may be able to see a dramatic drop in someone's heart rate variability, or dramatic effects to how they're sleeping at night, slow wave sleep, REM sleep, falling off a cliff. My hope is that in measuring athletes of this level, going through that level of stress, we may be able to identify things that can help them.
Yeah, because I mean, Don and I were talking last week. There was a player who caught a ball, landed, looked innocuous, tore his ACL. And so there's got to be something going on neurologically that set that up, where maybe, 30 years ago, that's not happening. But now for some reason, these players are stepping, blow out their knee. And I think there's something else going on. Like you said, maybe a previous incident that wasn't detected.
Well, stress overall, I mean, it's incredible. A lot of people don't understand how stress can tighten up the human body. And that's the simplest way to put it. I mean, through business, I remember there was a span of my business career where, my club really was getting hit. I was losing a large amount of money every month. And when you start losing sleep, and my training wouldn't change. Like, I was still doing the mobility work. I was still breathing. I was still training. I was still eating the same. I thought I was sleeping around the same amount of time, but that constant stress on my body every day, I started noticing that my mobility was going south. And I started noticing that I became a much more chest breather, rather than breathing down into my diaphragm. And when that started happening, I remember asking myself for a period of time, why is my body getting tighter? Like, I could hardly touch my toes right now. And I thought I was going to fix it through exercise and trying to do more breathing. And then what happened was, as I started eliminating that stress, I then noticed that my range of motions started kind of repairing. And I mean, with the amount of partying that these guys do, with the lack of rest, poor nutrition. There was an NBA player the other day that revealed his diet and he was eating nothing but gummy bears all day long. And you start listening to this stuff and you're like, guys, you can get away with this stuff when you're 17, 18, 19 years old. But when you're 27, 28, 29, the body starts changing. 35, 36, 37, you better start thinking a lot differently, or you're not going to be playing that long. That's why I like this.
And by the way, the guys who are getting paid age 35 and on have figured this out at age 28, and it's compounding benefits, right? And then on the flip side, you see these guys all of a sudden are like no longer in their league after being a top player 2 years ago. And it's just because those lifestyle decisions compounded.
Well, that's an interesting stat that I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's an interesting stat that I would love to see is you take the superstars that their careers, when I say ended early, like look at Rob Gronkowski. I mean, he just retired. How old's he?
Probably 29.
Yeah, I think that's – I mean, I know this is – I mean, the average football career, Derek, is what, 4 years?
Yeah. If that.
Rob had a reputation of partying. I don't know. I feel like I've physically gotten stronger as I've gotten older. Things have changed. I have to think differently, but I've been preparing for that since I'm 21, 22. These guys, they want to go out and they want to live a specific way. Their careers are ending, whether it's to concussions or back injuries. Their body, you call it what you want. I want to see a comparison between guys who've treated their bodies like Tom Brady, or have taken that type of thought process. And guys who've gone out at 25, 26 are like, oh no, I'm throwing no hitters. I can go drink, I can party, or I'm able to have a good range session. I'm able to go out and party. John Daly, like, listen, was he a success or was he a failure? Like, the guy's career ended early. You know, he's not playing where he used to play. And listen, the proof is in the pudding. I keep saying that line. All these guys, your career will be short-stayed if you try and maintain what you've been doing when you're 24, 25 years old. And if that's partying, you're not going to be playing long. But I want to see some comparisons on that. People aren't thinking that way, unfortunately.
Yeah. And look, I think a lot of this goes back to what do you want in life, right? What are your goals? I think the reality is that there's many professional athletes who think of themselves as professional athletes on any given Sunday, but don't necessarily think of themselves as professional athletes 24/7. And so you just inevitably wake up one day and you're not in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, as I get older, I'm thinking, okay, like Don said, well, you know, I find I'm a little more hypersensitive to stuff. So like I said, the travel, something I eat, have alcohol, whatever. And so I think that's another piece, is the aging piece. As we get older, I'd like to know how much more precise I have to get with the timing of my workouts, how much sleep I get, because I think when I was like in my 20s, there's so much margin for error. You could just do whatever you wanted. But certainly I see this as a product for somebody who's, you know, okay, I'm getting a bit older. I don't want to kill myself on this run or this lift or whatever, but I want to make sure I'm eating properly, because I'm not, you know, seem to be gaining fat a lot easier. Like, those types of things interest me.
I think it's a great point. And by the way, as you get older, things like heart rate variability decreases. It becomes harder to get slow wave sleep. So, you know, just being able to keep some of these statistics flat over time is actually a huge win, right? You want to avoid the decay. And one feature that we're working on at Whoop that I'm very excited about is this idea of being able to compete with a younger version of yourself. So, you know, you'll be able to identify someone on the platform who is literally looks like you, but is a younger person, right? So I'm about to turn 30 years old, 29 right now. When I was in college, okay, there's definitely a college squash player on Whoop today who's 6'3" and weighs 180 and da-da-da-da-da, right? And I want to know how I'm hanging with that guy today, and that's going to help drive me. On the flip side, there's probably someone, you know, an older version of me that I want to make sure I don't quite look like yet. So, you know, I think that's another fun thing about data, is it lets you actually contextualize where you are in your life.
Yeah, just like getting a blood test and seeing where all my, you know, numbers are for that. I think it interests me. How about, here's another one. How about, has anybody approached you about monitoring their children? Like, I know, you know, you don't want to do too much with your kids in that respect, but has anybody said like, hey, I want to see where my kid's at?
It's not a market we've gone super deep on yet. Certainly people have said that to us, and I do think it's quite important. We have people as young as 13 on Whoop. You know, once you get like under the age of 10, all of a sudden you're talking about different wrist sizes and actually some different physiological signals. So it's a little more complicated. The product actually has to be catered for that population. But I will say, like, you know, all the parents out there that want their kids to get into good schools and don't want to tell their kids to go to bed at a certain time, Whoop does a lot of that for you, because it does, you know, it tells you when to go to bed, and in a lot of ways it is sometimes telling you things you already know. But when you look at the data, it forces you to make a shift. And I have to imagine that REM sleep is a big secret that the better students are getting and the worst students aren't. Like, if you have to study for a test and you want to retain information, if you get 15 minutes of REM sleep versus an hour and a half, it almost doesn't matter how much studying you did. You're not going to remember any of it. And so that's just, to me, feels like cognitively a piece that's missing in the equation.
No, it was interesting. I think when I started wearing Whoop, I gave it about, I think it was 30 days to just allow the data to kind of
calibrate. Yeah,
calibrate. And then when I got a pretty good understanding of where I was at, it was at the exact time when I went and I bought blue light glasses.
Oh, cool.
And I also went and I bought, my room's not completely blacked out, because my wife likes to be on her iPad all night, which is very annoying. So I just went and I got those blinders and I put those on, and I pretty much immediately picked up it was almost an hour a night, which is a lot on the days when I didn't have to, wake up by an alarm. And I remember that, and it was showing me that. So not only did I wake up and I was like, oh my God, I just slept to 7:30. I can't tell you the last time I've done that, but I was able to look down at my Whoop every morning and just say, cool, look at that register. My average is starting to come up now. And I think this almost becomes a little bit of a gamification component now. Like it starts becoming a game between yourself. How can I improve things? How can I, and that's the biggest, listen, the biggest takeaway, I love performance, but I'm a guy that, went from, trying to tell everyone to be optimal to now just trying to get someone to improve their sleep by 15 minutes, because I know what a difference that's going to make on a lifestyle. Yeah. So if that can open each individual's eyes to maybe not having that second glass of wine one night, or maybe, deciding that, I'm not going to junk out a full day on my cheat day. Maybe it's become a cheat meal because it's really going to affect my sleep quality. To me, that's where I think a lot of the magic is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And by the way, blue light blocking glasses, I've been using them now too. I think they're amazing.
Yeah.
And, before you were talking about how as lifestyles evolve, as culture evolves, how do humans catch up? 10 years ago, it wasn't necessarily a problem to be staring at a cell phone in bed, right? It's just that now we're at peak smartphone. And if you're going to be looking at a screen before you go to bed, that light is really affecting your brain right before you go to sleep. And I think it's where the blue light blocking glasses are pretty compelling.
I love it. I've got actually one, I want to jump to one topic right now because I know what your answer is going to be, but everyone is so panicked about, the radio waves that, our phone is giving off, or, Bluetooth. And, I was listening to an influencer the other day, and, every influencer wants to jump on and they want to give some ounce of information that's going to allow them to seem relevant.
Yeah.
Are we blowing this all out of proportion with the electrical current waves coming from our smartphones? Is that something that we really need to worry about? Or is it like with artificial sweetener, you would have to have so much of it for it to cause cancer?
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is that Bluetooth, which is what Whoop uses, Bluetooth low energy, is a really, really low frequency, right? And the reality is, even if you're not, so that's just a low frequency, it's not going to affect you. Then the next layer up from that is Wi-Fi, and then the next layer up from that is cell right next to your ear, right? In terms of things that could potentially affect you. Wi-Fi is ubiquitous. So to say that you're afraid of Wi-Fi is, you can't go outside.
Yes.
Right?
We're all screwed.
I think for the people that are concerned about the cell service coming to your ear, that's where maybe it's okay to use AirPods or something like that, some kind of a Bluetooth headset. I prefer using a hands-free, not putting my phone up to my ear. But I think I think that in general, because these things are so ubiquitous, it's sort of like it's too late, a little bit. at least for our generation, maybe our kids will be able to learn something from us.
Right.
But, if someone thinks that by putting their phone into airplane mode, before they go to bed, they're going to just prevent themselves from getting cancer. That's their prerogative, but it's totally not true.
Right. Interesting.
What about just like, is there a point where ignorance is bliss and we don't necessarily need to be inundated with all of this information? Like, I'm just taking the devil's advocate side. Like, do you think sometimes having too much data can stress people out? Like, if I'm constantly looking at what are my vitals and I only got this much sleep. Can that create stress for people by just?
Well, it's a good point. In large part, it's why Whoop doesn't have a screen on it. We wanted the product to be passive. We didn't want it to be affecting you in the moment as much. Sure, you can look at data in real time on your phone. And if you're exercising, you can see data in real time on your phone. But we actually consciously decided that there's enough screens in the world. We don't need to put another one on our product. And I think your point is fair. You want to use this information to empower you, not to discourage you.
So what's next? What you've done is incredible.
Thank you.
Yes, you built a business, and trust me, I love that, but you're also making a difference in my eyes because you're giving people information at any level. You're giving someone who, Rory McIlroy, you're giving them information, but you're going to potentially give, a 9-to-5 worker information as well, who maybe is living a sedentary lifestyle. But what's next? How's the technology going to evolve? Like, what's on the horizon?
I think in general, just doubling down on human performance. I believe that every individual has potential that you can tap into if you can better understand their body. And at Whoop, we view it's our role to try to help someone understand his or her body and then improve. And it's a noble mission, we think, and it includes wearable technology, but we want to make that as easy and as comfortable for you to wear as possible. And it includes a lot of data, and we also want to make that as easy and as accessible as possible. So whether you want to look at information that's just one number, we've got that for you. Whether you want to peel the onion way back and really understand all the different, raw metrics that we were talking about, that's possible too. I think the most important thing is, like you said, Don, put the power in the people's hands, give them the information, and give them a chance to improve their bodies.
All right. Well, listen, congrats on everything. Like I said, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you and watching your business. And it's exciting for me because I see what this is doing already, and I'm seeing the potential on what else it's going to be doing in the future. And for me, that's what really excites me. I'm kind of like, all right, what does he have up his sleeve next? So, Will, can you just let everyone know if they want to know more about the product, learn more about you, where are they going to go find that?
Yeah, you can check out Whoop at whoop.com, WHOOP.com. You can follow us on social at Whoop, WHOOP. And then you can find me online at Will Ahmed. That's WILLAHMED.
All right, guys, there you have it. Derek and I with the CEO of Whoop. Check them out. Speak very highly of them. And Will, of course, he's become a friend. And till next time, thanks everyone for your time. And Derek, anything to say, brother?
No, I'm just gonna manage.
Happy 50,
yeah, got 50 more years to go, Don.
I love you, bro. Will, thanks, guys. Enjoy your Friday. Will, thank you so much.
Really
Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.